We've been working on something pretty special here. This is soon to be a 12-valve powered International. Last video we took care of the chassis. Every ball joint, every bushing. The rear end was rebuilt. Anything that could be replaced was replaced. And this is that chassis. She's looking pretty good, honestly. In order to get her moving under her own power, she needs a motor, so that's what we're gonna tackle in this video. And this is that motor. We pulled this first gen Dodge out of a swamp. It sat there for 15 years. We got it running. And now she's gonna power our International. First thing I wanna tackle is getting our intercooler, radiator, AC condenser, everything off of the front of this whole gal to make it easier to pull up with our tractor and get the motor out. So the first heat exchanger we pulled off of here was for our AC condenser. This one right behind it is our intercooler. And now before 1991 and a half, these first gen Dodges didn't come with intercoolers. They were just turbocharged. Just to keep bugs and debris out of our motor, all you need is just a glove. Throw it over there. Fits nice and tight. Want some extra security? Throw a zip tie on it. Sometimes you gotta tap these open. Get a little tool in there to pry them apart. Already got a glove on our turbo here, but now we just open up a new hole. Same deal. And our intercooler should lift right out of here. Even though this intercooler is 30 years old and it's been sitting in a swamp for 15 years, she's still clean on the inside. So to keep her clean, same thing, covering up all the holes. There we go. Oh, wow. Look at that. I don't even know what that is. Yeah, that little ribbon is part of that. I think we need a new one of these bad boys. Still like, yeah. There's the other side. Now, I like old junk, you guys know that, and I'm all about if there ain't no oil under it, there ain't no oil in it. But this is another level. That's crazy. We got like an 1/8 of an inch thick of just crud on this whole thing. Got even more just chunks down here. Crazy. These 12 valves have fully mechanical fuel injection. no emissions, very limited electronics, and they're super, super easy to get dirt cheap horsepower out of. And those are a couple reasons why I chose it for this build. Another reason is I'm familiar with these motors. If you guys are frequent watchers of the channel, you've seen this old girl. This is our tow rig. Me and my old man used to call it our street tractor. It's kind of funny, me and my dad calling our tow rig a street tractor, because Cummins actually sold this 5.9 Cummins to Case, and it was put in tractors before it was ever in a Dodge pickup. And then in 1989, Dodge started putting this in the first gen Dodge, trying to compete with GM and Ford, who had pretty good diesel motors in their own right. Is it really a project if you don't start 5 other small projects on the way to getting it done? I don't have any way to pick up that diesel motor, so unfortunately we got to fix this old girl first. Well, James came by to help, got the water pump off. We only had to disassemble about half the tractor to get it. Yep, that thing was shot. It's now pitch black outside, and James has fully assembled everything. We got my old man out here too, double checking our work, and we just got added coolant. And then tomorrow, hopefully we can rip that 12 valve out of there.
I'll just leave it like that.
How does that look? Soon she'll be in there. But first, we're gonna take this old girl and we're gonna degrease her, get her looking nice and clean so we can take everything off, place a bunch of seals and gaskets, and get her going again. We got this old girl cleaned up. Now we're gonna start stripping her down to a bare block. Separate the tranny, that way we can get our flywheel resurfaced and check out our clutch. Gotta get back to work. We're just tilting the engine. That thing won't come off, so we're gonna be a little bit more persuasive. So we just use this sitting up against our crank pulley so we could get maximum leverage on it, and yeah, she finally came off. It's supposed to be a 13, and an 11 almost fits on it. That's crazy. on a dowel pin. Can you tap it there? We're going on day 3 of this project right now. And after taking off that water pump and taking off those radiator hoses, I'm starting to realize that these water jackets are really, really bad. The game plan with this motor originally, I wasn't even gonna open it up. I was gonna replace the valve cover gaskets, the front cover gaskets, the front and rear main seals, all that good stuff, and just send it. After all, she did run. But in order to get to the water jackets to clean them, at a minimum the head has to come off. And well, you know, if the head comes off, we might as well install some better valve springs. And if we install better valve springs, we might as well lap the valves. And what's the difference if we just go ahead and port the head? I knew this would happen. If I had to open up the engine, I'd run down a bunch of rabbit holes. I picked this motor because of how reliable it is. Everything's mechanical. She basically can't fail. But there is one thing that is known for killing these motors, and that is right here. It's nothing mechanical. It serves no purpose besides assembly. And it is a dowel, and it's called the killer dowel pin. What people do is they put a little bracket on this bolt right here to hold it down. It really only has one spot to fall, and that's directly on a gear. And when that dowel gets bound up in one of these gears, well, lots of bad stuff happens. When we put this old girl back together, we'll address that. So this is how I'm keeping my parts organized. They're all in this toolbox. And all the push rods are marked 1 through 12, starting from front to back. And obviously, I have a mark on each of those. And then I'm just setting my rocker arms down in it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just keeping everything organized like that. All the pistons are in pretty good shape. Not perfect, but pretty good shape. As you can see some surface rust on our cylinder walls. You can still see really good cross hatching. Pretty big carbon lip right up here at the top. But this motor does have 200,000 miles on it. The rest of them really ain't looking too bad besides the slight surface rust. Hopefully all that will hone out and we'll be good. We've got to start a side project tally because this is number 2 now. I have a 1,000-pound engine stand, and I think this thing weighs about 1,000 pounds. Now that the head's off of it, and I herniated 2 discs getting it out, but if it ain't one thing, it's another. This is our mount that goes in here, and the holes will not line up with the side engine mounts. It's just they aren't close enough together. So looks like we're starting side project number 3. This weird looking piece of metal is actually the piece of the frame that we cut out to shorten it. So I feel like it's fitting to make it out of this. I guess you could call this side project number 4. This used to look like that. Let's get working. proclaim to be a welder, but we attach 2 pieces of metal. She is. And well, I was driving home from work. I saw Harbor Freight and I decided to stop. So I don't need this engine stand anymore. The overall inside of this block, she's looking really good. Nothing's like feeling loose. Everything's good. Nothing really to complain about. I'm glad that we opened it up because like down here, we got some gunk down there. She just needed to be cleaned up and double checked. So I'm glad we ended up taking her apart. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and break them all loose. Might end up having to rotate the motor over.
That's all that stuff, huh?
You got it? Real gentle. Can you take it out?
Yeah, that's tough. I guess. Rings out. Okay, I got it.
You gotta pick up on your side. Alright, we got this old gal apart. We were taking her apart just to clean those water jackets, but since we got her open, we might as well check everything and see what we can reuse. Our camshaft, you're looking at your lobes. Make sure that none of them are like missing the tips. There's no grind marks on them. There's only one right here with a little bit of wear on it. It looks like a piece of gunk got in there, scratched it on up. But if you can see all the other ones, they are almost brand new. We're definitely going to reuse this cam. This thing looks amazing. First, you want to check out the piston. Got plenty of wiggle, nothing's bound up. You're comparing all the pistons, seeing how much carbon's gotten past the rings, what the rings look like. We're going to replace these anyway. 200,000 miles has probably made them pretty tired. Looking for cracks, anything that's kind of out of the ordinary. Coming down to our rods, making sure they're straight, they're not bent. Coming down here, making sure there's no cracks around the bolts. We can check our bearing surfaces. This one's showing a very slight amount of copper. There's some ones that are worse than this one. But, you know, she probably would have kept running for quite a bit. Decent amount of wear. Definitely not reusing these. Our main caps, all the bearings are in our main caps looked pretty much what you'd expect them to. They're all pretty decent, not too much wear. Your tappets, looking for a nice flat top. They all have a slight wear to them, but it's not super bad. And then just looking for anything that looks out of the ordinary on these bad boys. Now that was just the visual inspection. There's a lot more measurements that we got to take. We are kind of on a budget here, but that doesn't mean I want to put piece of junk parts back in my motor. So we're gonna figure out the best way to rebuild this girl for the best price. When I took everything apart, I didn't show it, but I actually marked every single rod, cap, everything. So everything's marked with the cylinder that it belongs in and the direction. So it's gonna be a lot easier to put it back together. Everything's kind of worn together, and I don't want to mix anything up. The top one is called your top ring. I imagine that. Got that one off. We're not reusing any of these, so I'm not being super careful with taking them off. Really, they're not as worn out as I thought they'd be. See, once we got it cleaned up, piston skirt, just small scratches. That's kind of expected. Inside of our rod bore, got a little bit of wear. I think most of that should come out. I think we'll be good. Now, normally what most people struggle with on their first engine build, well, even if it's not their first engine build, is normally tools. There's so many tools that you need to check stuff like this. Here's my tooling issue right now. This is my biggest micrometer, and it doesn't measure the piston skirt. Looking at the sides of the skirts though, not much wear. They're going to be within spec. These are the factory pistons. The normal width of these piston skirts is 4.0110 inch. Now we could measure this with a caliper, but it's not going to get us in the precise enough range to really make a for sure call. This is a dowel bore gauge. This is how you measure a bore. Here I am struggling with tooling again. Mine does not fit in this bore, so our pin bushing's looking pretty good up here. Not too much to complain about. So this is like the first thing I can measure that we've come across. If you guys haven't used a micrometer before, it's kind of tricky to read it. You get used to it after some time. I'm still not the best. With this style micrometer, this end right here actually is ratcheting, so when you get it real close and tight, it actually won't let you over tighten it, and then you can get a pretty precise measurement. Each one of those is in increments of 25 thousandths. That big one would be 1.55. That one's 1.75. And we're over the minimum spec here. If you guys look, got copper showing on that rod. Definitely some right there. That rod and that rod also had some copper showing, but crank ones are looking pretty good. Coming over here to our tappets, found 3 that weren't completely flat on the tip. They have almost like a manufacturing defect on them. This one's super obvious. It's rough enough to catch with your fingernail good. Might just go ahead and get 3 more just to replace them. Sure, it wouldn't be an issue. Coming over to our block, we're checking for flatness on the top. I don't have a precision straight edge, so I really can't measure that, but looking at this thing, it's almost definitely warped. 200,000 miles, all those heat cycles, all those combustions, this thing's gonna be warped a little bit, so we're just gonna go ahead and get this sent out to be decked. And we'll go ahead and measure the bores and make sure we're good there. This is kind of a cheap dial bore gauge, so really not gonna be too precise with it. I kind of cheated because I already measured these before. 58, same thing, flip it. This one's 58. So you just go around checking them all, checking at different angles, making sure that we're still pretty much around 58. Go down to the middle, 58. All the way down to the bottom, 58. Yep, 58. Also, there's only one replaceable cam bushing. She's right here. Honestly, looks really good. You could reuse it. We're gonna install another one just in case. All the other ones inside, they're just bored out. So with our cylinder head, we're looking for flatness just like we were on the block. I don't have a precision straight edge, so I can't check that with much accuracy. What I can check is up here on the valves. So my spring compressor really wasn't wanting to work. This tip wouldn't fit around it, and we were barely getting enough clamp to compress it. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and fabricate something using this bolt to compress both of the springs at the same time. We'll see what I can figure out here. This is a mower blade. I believe it's off of our bush hog, and I think it's gonna be thick enough and sturdy enough to get us that compression that we need. I think they sell tools for what I'm making, but I think I'm gonna be able to whip it up in about 20 minutes. And if I can make it in 20 minutes, well then I ain't gonna wait 2 days for shipping. Yeah, I'm gonna have to clean that up. So this is our piece. I wire wheeled it so it's a little shinier now. Here's one of our valves, there's the other valve, and then there's gonna be our bolt that we're gonna hopefully compress this down with. Every single one of my 1/2-inch drill bits is dulled, and so I ended up cutting it out with a torch. This is probably the ugliest tool I've ever made. I got the date on it, the date I made it. She does work pretty good. She got the first 2 springs off really fast, so let's zip the rest of them off. So you compress the spring, just pop out the keepers. The head's stripped down, so time to check our valves. We're looking down at the seat, making sure there's no pitting, nothing serious happening. Nice and flat. Make sure the rod isn't bent. Now at the top, make sure we don't have excessive wear from the rocker, and then we measure the stem to make sure it's in spec. Like I said before, it feels like the limiting factor on engine rebuilds is always tools. And well, sometimes you just got to make stuff work. I don't have a proper injector puller, but I do have a pair of vice grips and a slide hammer. Just like that. So right now on our head, it's looking like we're going to be able to reuse every single valve. They're all awesome. Our injectors, they're a little cruddy at the tip. I'm imagining they probably don't have a pretty good spray pattern. We're going to get them tested and double check. If not, we'll get some new ones. Our block looked perfect with this crappy little dowel bore gauge that I got. You can still see the cross hatching real good. Got a couple nicks in there, but it'll come out with honing. Obviously, the top surface needs to be decked, and we got to get the rust out of the jackets, but besides that, this old girl's good. For rods, pistons, camshafts, everything's been double checked. We're going to be able to reuse all this stuff, just got to get new bearings. And our crankshaft. I know I haven't showed you guys this yet, and I haven't taken any measurements, but that's because it was the first thing I measured. Everything's looking really good. Honestly, these are still basically polished. Probably more polished than you'll ever get them at a machine shop. But yeah, she's looking really good. Our front sealant surface has a little bit of wear that you can feel with your fingernail. It might polish out. And then our rear main feels amazing. There's no lip on there at all. Well, disassembling this girl was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it. There was some things that definitely needed to be addressed, and well, I'm happy that we're taking care of them. Unfortunately, this is where I'm wrapping up this video. I got to get the block and the head to a machine shop, and I got a lot more work to do.